Welcome back to Social Impact Live, and specifically on this Saturday episode of Inspiration to Master Your Destiny by. I'm Darrell Coleman, your host, and today I want to share a quote by Charlotte Brontë. The quote goes, "I try to avoid looking forward or backward, and I try to keep looking upward." When I first saw this quote, it really resonated with me, and I'll give you the reason for why it resonated with me initially, and then why it's begun to resonate more and more with me as well. So this idea of looking forward and looking backward, or rather the challenge that we face whenever we do so, is that we're stuck in a world that either existed before, or at least existed as we remember it, or an imaginary world that we can think of coming into fruition. Largely though, that track, the world of the past translating into the world of the future, is a predictable one. It's one that we think is based on the events that have happened so far, and it doesn't leave as much room for the creativity that we are ultimately seeking in our lives. So much of our past and our future can either be based in sorrow or it can be based in joy, but either way, when we look to the past, we are stuck sort of in that space. When we look to the future, we're stuck imagining things based on the path that they've been following that whole time. So when I first saw this quote, what really resonated with me about it was this idea of looking upward, which really was about looking in a different direction than the one that everything is heading in right now. Thinking more expansively about what's possible, thinking beyond the predictable steps that things have been taking and that they might take, to think about what could be if we were to break out of some of the routines that we're in right now. So when I first saw this quote, I really thought about it as something that resonated with me because it reminded me to see beyond what is obvious, see beyond what is likely, to try to create possibilities in my own life that could be different, and also to be more expansive, to say, what if you were well beyond the place in the future that you're trying to get to, so far beyond it that you're not trying to get there, you're trying to get here, right? You're trying to get to this place that's a lot bigger and broader above all of that. What if your vision were so big, so much more expansive in general, that it took you beyond this scripted future that you see in front of you, but rather became a bigger thing? And when I think of upward, I think of the sky, I think of wide open spaces, I think of a place where there's just a lot of airiness in general, and within that airiness there is possibility. So that was what I first thought of when I first saw this quote, and I think is one of the interpretations I still sort of have and will carry with me. But as I read it again and again and again, the other thing that came to mind was this idea of looking upward, as in looking at something greater, looking at God, looking at the spirit of our own existence, looking at something again that is broader than this sort of human day-by-day experience that we're in, broader and bigger than the past that we can imagine or the future that we see, the material elements, the senses that we have right now. To look upward means to look deeper into the infinitude of our own existence, the infinitude of our creation, the infinitude of that which created everything in the first place. And as I think about that, as I think about my relationship with God and my concept of thinking broader than this human existence into something that is more divine, into something that is more lasting, that is less transient, that is spiritual in nature and somehow indescribable, I realize also that the past in and of itself, while powerful as a force to remember, it doesn't have a hold on me. And the future in and of itself, the path that we were walking right now, isn't absolutely certain, nor does it have a hold on me, because when I look upward, I see that I too am more expansive than either of those options, either of those paths, and that in and of itself is freeing and liberating for me. So I look upward to rely on God, to rely on my Creator, to rely on the spirit of existence in and of itself. So that is what I have for you today as a sort of an interpretation of this quote. hopefully you can find this quote in and of itself inspirational, right? It's written by Charlotte Brontë, and one of the other things that I think was interesting about it is that Charlotte Brontë is the author of Jane Eyre, a really popular book. She was an English novelist, and she originally wrote her works under a different name, under a pseudonym, one that would be often interpreted as being a male writer. And that was because when she wrote her books at the time, it was very uncommon for women to be respected as authors or really as people who were contributing in any way to the professional world. So she wrote these books. Her and her sisters actually wrote a number of books, but wrote these books under this sort of pseudonym so that the book could be read objectively. And I really just resonated also with this idea that, people across time and space from all sorts of backgrounds have had challenges in their past in some way. But they also have these dreams, right? And so they think when those dreams are tapped into, when we really want to make them real, when we really want to bring them to life, and we look forward based on that past, we can see challenges all around us. But there's something about continuing to pursue that and being creative and sticking with that thing that comes from above in the first place, that desire that comes from above in the first place, sticking with that. There's something about that is in and of itself powerful. And so the idea that Charlotte Brontë was the one who coined this quote here really resonated with me because of her story and the fact that Jane Eyre became a major success as a book that students are still reading, all across the world, and at the time was praised, especially when they thought it was a man who was writing it, as being something that was just so pure in its storytelling. She defied those odds, and I have to think that looking upward had a role in that. All right, that's what I've got for you on this day. Hopefully you found this inspirational. If you've got comments or you've got thoughts on that, or you've read Jane Eyre or any of Charlotte Bronte's other works, which I know were limited because she died rather young, I would love to hear a comment from you. I'd love to hear how you're interpreting that. If you find these messages useful, I'd love to know that as well. Leave a comment, and I will talk to you tomorrow on another episode of Social Impact Live. Keep it up.